Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around to join us as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all sorts of good things. And you open up the surprise gift, and out comes up the Jack in the Box himself, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing today, sir?
I feel like I'm the Jack in the Box in It's a Good Life when the kid, Billy Mummy's like, "You're a bad man. You're a very bad man." And my head's just bobbing back and forth now, John.
If you could do that the entire episode, I think that would be great. If you could just be our little our living Robert Meyer Burnett bobblehead doll. Hey, listen, guys. I trust you guys are all having a fabulous week, and congratulations, you made it through to the end of yet another week. It's a Friday. May you have a wonderful weekend planned ahead of yourselves, filled with triumph and victory and relaxation and maybe a little bit of fun, even if you got to do it remotely. Anyway, guys, listen, we do have a number of things we need to talk about here today. You know, we're talking about opening up the movie theaters again. There's a lot of talk going around about opening up the movie theaters again. Robert and I are going to talk about the things that the movie theaters are going to need to do first in order to open these theaters again. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. Turns out there's going to be a live action adaptation of the animated Disney film Hercules, which I found really interesting. What's even more interesting are the guys who are going to be producing it. We're going to be talking about that a little bit. The first official logo for Space Jam has now come out. LeBron James posted that out. We'll talk about all that kind of stuff and more in just a little bit. Now, before we do, though, there's a couple of things I think we need to clear up over the past couple of days that, you know, it doesn't matter how often we've said it here. There's still a lot of confusion out there. Because, Rob, yesterday, I had a few people write to me to say, John, did you see that Regal came out and put out a tweet that said they weren't banning Universal films? To which I wanted to say to everybody, yes, but they never said they were banning Universal films. What Regal said they were doing is the exact same thing that AMC said they were doing. They are going to ban the films that Universal tries to release on VOD and in theaters at the same time. That's what they said. Now, this all came from, of course, it started off with Jeff Shell's comment. And Jeff Shell wrote the following. And again, I don't know why I disappeared in the picture, but let's read this thing in the following. You know, Jeff Shell wrote this. This is what got everything started. As soon as theaters reopen, we expect to release movies on both theatrical and digital formats. Now, he has since gone on to clarify that he doesn't think he's going to do that with every movie. There are going to be some films that they believe that the VOD release along with the theatrical release would be for certain complementary films. Whatever, which got AMC CEO Adam Aron to respond. Going forward, AMC will not license any Universal movies in our 1,000 theaters globally on these terms. And we tried to emphasize, Rob, that, you know, if they put out Fast 9 and they don't try to do it on VOD at the same time, AMC will carry that movie. But they've been very clear on that. Regal yesterday basically emphasized the exact same thing. Now, this is a quote we read on yesterday's show, but it bears repeating. This is from Cineworld, the owners of Regal, who wrote, Universal unilaterally chose to break our understanding and did so at the height of the COVID-19 crisis when our business is closed, more than 35,000 employees are at home, and when we do not yet have a clear date for reopening our cinemas. Cineworld's roots go back 90 years in the industry, and it was always open to showing any movie as long as the rules were kept and not changed by one-sided moves. Today, we make it clear again that we will not be showing movies that fail to respect the window, as it does not make any economic sense for us. So essentially here, Rob, you know, Regal and AMC were both saying the same thing. They're both saying, under these terms that you're talking about, you want to put things out in theaters and on VOD? It ain't going to happen. And it needs to be emphasized again, because I see a lot of people spreading a lot of misinformation online saying this notion from Regal and AMC to say, yeah, if you do that, we're not showing your movies, as being some sort of reaction. This needs to be clarified. This has been the rule for these theater chains for decades. This has been the rule for years and years and years and years. It has always been the rule that if you are a movie studio and you try to release your movies on VOD at the same time you put out in theaters, your movies will not play in our theaters because that's not good for us, and we're not going to do that. This has always been the rule, and I see a lot of people out there spreading a lot of misinformation about that. But Rob, you and I didn't have a chance to discuss yesterday, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to throw in your 2 cents worth with Regal stepping up and their parent company, Cineworld, stepping up now and adding their voices to the whole fray. What do you think about Regal joining in on this?
Well, look, I mean, this is a huge thing. Movie theaters only get their product from the studios or mini majors or any other distributor. That's it. If they're not getting the movies to play in their theaters, they don't have anything. That's their supply line. It's totally cut off. Now, if they aren't confident that 3-month window, who's to say if the studio says, well, okay, Trolls World Tour was one thing, but we're going to try. I mean, Universal said we're going to do what makes sense to us. Well, say Regal books a movie from Universal into their theaters, and then Universal decides, I don't know, a week or two out because the tracking is soft or whatever reason, they decide, you know what, we've decided that we're also going to go SVOD, day and date with a theatrical release. Well, what are they going to do? I mean, their supplier has changed the rules on them. They need assurances that when they book a theater, and they usually book these things months and months in advance.
Yes. Yeah.
That you can't change this is not Lando Calrissian, and this is not Vader. This is not Cloud City. Vader is part of the Empire, and I'm altering the deal. Pray I alter it. I don't alter it any further. Well, that's kind of what the movie studios are to these theater chains. They're Vader, and the studios are Lando. I mean, the studios are Vader, and the movie theaters are Lando. And if they want to alter the deal, what are you going to do about it? They have no recourse. They can say, well, we won't play your movie. And Universal's like, fine, we're releasing it day and date. I mean,
think so? You think Universal, with their piddly 14 to 16% of market share, and they've got like a Fast 9, and instead of making $1 billion, it faces the prospects of making $175 million? You think Universal will just look at that and go, fine?
Well, I don't think it's going to be that. I don't think it's going to be that way with Fast 9. But I think that there's other movies that they're going to release. I mean, you're talking blockbusters. I don't think there's a problem, whether it's a Jurassic World or a Fast 9. But what if it's something else?
Because that would kill both sides. I mean, if like the theaters can't not show Fast 9, Universal cannot have it not in theaters. That would be killing both sides. Yeah,
but what if it was? If I know it's a Lionsgate movie, but what if it was something like Now You See Me, Now You Don't 3? And it was something that performs well, but not that well. Like, I think it's those mid-range titles that keep the movie theaters afloat between blockbusters that are important. And I think what you need assurances. It's like till death do us part. In a marriage, you both take it on faith that you guys aren't going to cheat on each other. I'm not saying you, but anybody who gets married isn't going to cheat on each other, and that you're going to be there for one another through the good times and the bad times. You're entering into an agreement that isn't just the words on paper. There's also that spirit of that agreement, and you need the movie studios to convince movie theaters that, look, you can trust us. There's got to be a trust there, and there's got to be, look, the movie theaters, the business is changing. Physical media, John, has been diminishing between 15 to 20% every year. So we know that that's changing. Streaming is taking off. And we're in the middle of this sea change. And the movie studios are like the girlfriend wondering, the theaters are the girlfriend wondering, do you guys still like me? I mean, is our relationship going to continue? Or are you going to just, go like the sexy streaming route? I mean, you have to assure movie theaters that you want them. And we both know that they do, but this is not the way to show it. And it seems even more underhanded that they did it during this COVID-19 outbreak.
Yeah.
It wasn't done well. And it's like when people, look, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. What are the theaters supposed to do? And the Odeon chain in England did the same thing. They also said that they're not going to play Universal movies. And I just think it's bad all the way around, because it's the insecurity that it becomes that corrosive thing.
Yeah, I agree. Somebody brought up, I was doing a live play in chat last night, and somebody brought up, John, couldn't an argument be made that having movies hit theaters and VOD at the same time be good for consumers? Couldn't you make an argument for that? And I said, here's what popped into my head. I'd be curious to know what you would say to this, Rob, because I haven't given a lot of thought since, but this was the first thought that came into my head when my viewer said that. I said, yeah, I think you can make an argument that movies popping up on VOD and theaters at the same time is better for the consumer, and not the least of which is because it gives you more choice about how and where you want to see the movies. I said, but here's the problem. But I'd like to hear what you have to say about this, Rob, because I might be missing something here. But I said, here's the problem. Take MoviePass as an example. MoviePass at $10 a month for unlimited movies, that's good for the consumer. That was great for the consumer. Pay $10 or $9.99 for this MoviePass card and I get unlimited movies. The problem, of course, was even though in theory it was good for the consumer, it was completely unsustainable. It doesn't work long term. And I said, at least I said this off the top of my head. I said, the notion of this is great, except for it will lead to the destruction of the movie theaters, and it will lead to movie studios having to completely relook at how they make their movies. And like the age of the big blockbuster, probably gone. Because you're not going to be able to make $2 billion on a VOD streaming. So I said, yeah, much like a MoviePass card, good for the consumer, but it's not sustainable and it doesn't work. And it actually, long-term, it undermines the entire industry, which ultimately is bad for the consumer. But I don't know, Rob, you hear that. That's the first thing that popped in my head, but I've been really curious to hear your point of view on that. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, when you talk about something being good for the consumer, what you're doing is you're taking away the onus from the business. I mean, and MoviePass never took into consideration the movie theaters. I mean, they wanted the movie theaters to give them part of their concession sales. Yeah. And it's like, so you want us to change our business model so your little MoviePass can now work better? I mean, it just seemed so weird. And this is the same way. I mean, movie theaters are not there to service anybody but the movie theaters. And by doing that, they provide a great environment by which consumers can come in and enjoy motion pictures. And then they provide food and refreshment, whatever else consumers are going to need to accentuate that movie-going experience. Like you well know, you go to that AMC down in downtown Burbank, you go to that Dolby Cinema, that is a tasty place to go see a movie in many, many different ways. I mean, the chairs, the projection, the sound system, the food, and they're doing their job. And that's the way I want to see a movie when I go out and pay my hard-earned money to sit down and watch a film in that kind of a venue. That's all they're supposed to do. Now, if someone's going to disrupt that or do something from the outside that movie theaters have no control over, that's going to affect their business, that's not fair to the movie theaters that are trying to provide this premium experience to people that want to pay for it. And I think that's look, for consumers, giving them choice is great, but you can't give consumers a choice at the expense of another business that they also rely on.
That's a good way of putting it. Anyway, guys, listen, I'm sure this is a topic of conversation that's going to be raging on over the next few weeks and months. Look, bottom line here is, Aaron brought this up yesterday and she was absolutely right. Universal Jeff Shell has to get his head out of his ass, and the theater owners have to get their heads out of their asses, and they've got to stop negotiating via headlines in news outlets, and they have to just get on the phone with each other, and they have got to straighten this out, because this ain't good for anybody, what's going on right now. And they have got to straighten this out, and they have both got to stop communicating via media. They've got to just get on the phone and talk with each other, and I hope they do that soon. All right, guys, listen. We got a couple things to talk about here off the top before we get into our main topics today. And the first thing, indulge me, guys. This one's for me. First thing I want to talk about is this. Last night saw the return of a new episode, for the first time in years, a new episode of Parks and Recreation. It was a Parks and Recreation reunion special, and it was done with all of the characters from Parks and Rec practicing social distancing. They're all at home. They're all speaking via telechat and stuff like that. And the whole episode was done that way. And you guys know how special Parks and Rec is to me. It's one of my top 3 all-time favorite sitcoms. It is one of my top 3 all-time. It's right up there with Seinfeld, The Office, and Parks and Rec. It is just simply one of the best shows I've ever seen. It was just charming, wonderful characters, great humor, heartfelt. And when they said goodbye a number of years ago, Ann and I, which watch the show every week, felt a lot of sadness. Last night they did a reunion special to benefit and to raise funds for Feeding America. Which is great because, you know, we've used Feeding America as well to raise money for Feeding America. The whole episode was done with them all on teleconferencing. The entire cast came back, including most of the big supporting cast came back. Paul Rudd was there as Bobby Newport. You had John Ralphio was there. Have You Heard with Purd was there. Councilman Jam was there. They brought everybody back, and I can tell you, it was utter perfection. If you were a Parks and Rec fan, you didn't even know it was on. You can get it streaming now for free on NBC's app, but it's free. It was absolutely perfect in every way. In every way. There was nothing that was not absolutely wonderful about this. All the characters, all the actors just nailed their roles again. It was great and they ended it off, Rob. They ended it off with all the cast members singing full blast, Bye Bye Little Sebastian, which is, of course, the 5,000 Candles in the Wind song that they did in Parks and Rec when the little pony died, Little Sebastian. And it was so great seeing all of them just like singing their guts out for it. Adam Scott was great. Chris Pratt was great. Rob Lowe was great. Amy Poehler was great. I mean, they were all just wonderful. If you have not seen it, I highly, highly recommend. If you ever watch Parks and Rec, you got to go and watch this reunion special. It was really, really special. The only bad thing, Rob, well, two bad things. It was only once, and it was only a half-hour special. That's the only bad side I've got out of this entire reunion special. So, guys, if you haven't done so and you enjoyed Parks and Rec, go and check out that special. You owe it to yourself. Okay, with that down, one more off the top, and this is kind of a big one. Rob, I don't know if you've heard this, but Sony Studios has the rights to make movies about some of the Marvel characters. I don't know if you were aware, which is kind of weird. They are the distributors of the Spider-Man movies, even the ones in the MCU. Sony are the distributors of those movies. They, of course, made their Venom film. They're making Morbius. They've got some other projects they've talked about. You know, Silver and Black has been brought up again recently. Whether that happens or not, we'll have to wait and see. But we've often called, and what's in a name, Rob? A rose by any other name. You know, what's in a name? But we have often called these Sony films the Spider-Verse films. Right? That's what we've kind of referred to the Sony side of it. You know, Venom's in the Spider-Verse films. That's what we call it. Well, apparently, Rob, Sony has now given an official name to these Sony Marvel films with Spider-Man and everything. And I'm not going to lie, it sounds a little ejaculatory. The name of the Sony movies is called SPUMC. Yes, you heard that right. SPUMC is the name of the Sony universe. They are officially calling it Sony Pictures Spider-Man Marvel. Wait a sec, let me get this right. Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel characters. They can't just go like simple short letter. No. They got to go like 5 letters. SPUMC. Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel characters. Say it with me again, guys. SPUMC. You know you want to say it. Rob, you know, a rose by any other name. It's just a name. It doesn't matter. The MCU is called the MCU. That's a cool sounding name. The DCU, I mean, they call it the DCEU. I often call it the DCU. Whatever. Fine. It's a name. Did nobody sit down and think, maybe SPUMC isn't the best name for this? I mean, look, it doesn't matter. I like the Venom film. I like the Spider-Man films. I'm looking forward to Morbius. None of that matters. But, I mean, am I overreacting by saying this is a really stupid name? I don't know, Rob. You heard about it this morning. What do you think of SPUMC?
Some dumbass got paid to come up with this. Like, literally. How about the Sony Pictures Spider-Verse? How about that? The Sony Pictures Spider-Verse. Nice ring to it. Sounds
SPSV.
cool. The Sony Pictures Spider-Verse. It's fun to say. It rolls off the tongue. But now we've got to call it the Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel characters. Look, this is the problem that I have with the world today. That this is now a problem with the world. I love it. This is just a small portion of how dumb our modern civilization can be. Like, somebody probably said in a meeting, well, you know, we don't want to limit ourselves to the Spider-Verse. I mean, what if we expanded? cares? You know what? All you can do is Spider-Man movies anyway. It's like the Sony Pictures Spider-Verse. It's cool. SS. But no, Sony Pictures Spider-Verse isn't cool enough. You're going to call it
SS carries some negative connotations. You might not want to call it the SS. Maybe SSV.
But it's the Sony Pictures Spider-Verse. So it's the SP. Just call it the SPS or SPSV. I don't know. I mean, Spider-Verse is a cool name.
Yeah.
It's a cool name. This is now SPUMC. First of all, it looks like, is it a military designation? The Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel Characters. No, it's not a Sony Pictures universe that includes Marvel characters. That doesn't work. That's not even what it is. And it looks stupid, and no one's going to call it that. And you know what? How long has it been called this? And now we're wantonly making fun of it. It took 24 hours minimum, and now we're going to make fun of this. By the end of today, this will be memed all over the world. Our fans, not our fans, but our people, our fan universe of like-minded people will wantonly make fun of this. I mean, I think Pornhub should start a channel called SPUMC just for fun. And it's only going to be for, their Spider-Man porn parodies. Come see our SPUMC channel. I mean, it's just so stupid.
Yeah, it's dumb. I gotta see if I can find this. I'm not sure if I can, but I'm going to try here. So here's the thing. This is what this reminds me of. Years ago, I lived in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, right? And the pork farmers of the Canadian Union of Pork Farmers, whatever, they were trying to come up with, dairy farmers. Funny. the dairy farmers have, what's the big milk catch line? It does a body good. You remember that? Milk does a body good, right? That's pretty cool. Yeah, it made you think of milk does a body good. So the pork farmers hired, I kid you not, you can go look this up. This is 100% true. Because one day I'm driving down the highway in Saskatchewan and I came across this huge billboard, and they hired an ad firm to come up with, for the pork industry, their version of milk, the one you love, right? Or milk does a body good. You know what they came up with? Pork, the one you love. Commas matter, ladies and gentlemen. Commas matter. And I'm just driving down the highway and I look up this billboard. Pork, the one you love? Really? Pork, the one you love. It's like, no. It's pork, the one you love. Read the billboard. It says pork, the one you love. And like at some idiot can't sit in a room and say, point of order here. I think this slogan of ours could be taken the same way, and maybe a lot of people make fun of it. And they looked at it and said, what are you talking about? Pork, the one you love. Nothing can go wrong. Nothing can go wrong. Yeah, I mean,
I want to see a billboard of Spider-Man, Venom, Carnage, and Morbius all running toward the billboard, like running toward you. And it just says, Spunk is coming.
Spunk is coming. You're going to spunk. Come see Morbius. You're going to spunk. I mean, I just don't, because you nailed it, Rob. Like, there had to have been a boardroom where a bunch of idiots in suits had to sit down and go, oh, yeah, that's good. They all had to look at this and say, oh, yeah, that's good. It's like there wasn't one guy to go, just point of order. I don't think people are going to like this. I mean, again, it doesn't make the movies any better or any worse, but like MCU, we talk about the MCU, it really flows off the tongue. It's easy. I don't understand. And listen, again, these aren't the directors and writers and the producers. These aren't the people who make the movies doing it, but it shakes my confidence a little bit in your ability to make movies when you are such a collection of idiots that you come up with spunk as your name.
Especially when I'm looking at, I called up your Twitter feed and I'm looking at your tweet about today's show, and I'm looking at the hashtag spunk. just the hashtag alone, hashtag SPUMC.
Gotta have some spunk. Everybody needs some spunk
forever. I mean, the thing about the MCU is, first of all, it's clean, but it also, in a way, the fact that it ends with a U, it conjures up the idea of a university. It might as well be Marvel Comics University or Marvel Cinematic University. It sounds erudite. It sounds elevated. MCU sounds like a kind of place that you want to be. I don't know if I want to be on the receiving end of spunk.
receiving end of spunk. Who wants to be? And there it is. There's your new T-shirt. You get Venom. Who wants to receive some spunk? Oh God, we're 12. We are so 12 years old. I don't know, but I just can't believe.
So is this acronym or whatever.
It's true. And listen, everybody knows I like what Sony's been doing for the last few years. I like what they've been doing for the last years, but this is so stupid. Anyway, guys, file this one under not very important, but oh my God, it's so dumb. Guys, question is, maybe you love this thing. Yeah, man, the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters. Maybe it's working for you. I don't know. Maybe it is. Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts and let the memes begin. All right, guys, with all that down and out of the way, it's time for us to move on to our main topics. How do we select our main topics here in the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with our main topics by going anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit. And then maybe, just possibly, you might see your submission featured as the main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get on to main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Oscar L., who writes, "Hey, John, did you see that LeBron James posted the first official logo for the new Space Jam movie?" As a matter of fact, I did. How excited are you for this film, and what do you think of the logo? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, we've known for a long time that they've been trying to get a new Space Jam with LeBron James up and running. I think James's production company, I think it's just called Braun Productions or something like that. They've been really, really active the last couple of years. Anyway, so LeBron James puts out on social media this picture of this hat, Space Jam, A New Legacy, has come out, and there we get a clearer picture of the logo itself over at our friends at joeblow.com. They've got a nice thing there starring, I love how they put Bugs Bunny in the credits. Bugs Bunny, LeBron James, Bugs Bunny, Space Jam, A New Legacy is the name out. So LeBron James puts that out. So the question asked to me was, how excited am I for this movie? Spunk. I mean, not a lot. I'll be honest with you. I am one of the few people. There's a lot of people out there, Rob, that have such a real special, cherished memory of that original Space Jam, right? It's a really special film to a lot of people. I got to admit, while I enjoyed it, it was never all that special a film to me. And I really don't, while I'm a big LeBron James fan, I really don't see any need for a purpose for this movie whatsoever. But that's fine. Maybe it'll be good and I'll give it a fair shot when it comes out. But anyway, Rob, you had a chance to take a look at this logo and this tweet and stuff like that. What do you think about Space Jam, A New Legacy, and the new logo?
Well, look, I was never a huge Space Jam fan. I mean, it's innocuous fun and all that, but it didn't float my boat necessarily. But I like LeBron James. You know, he made one appearance in a film where I thought he was pretty funny. You know, he came off all right.
Oh, you're talking about that comedy. What was the name of that? I can't even remember the name of the comedy. You're right. I think he was really good in that.
Yeah, he was funny. Can I come over and, what was it, Game of Thrones or whatever you want to come over and watch? Or, you know, it wasn't Game of Thrones. It was something else. But I like the idea of this. I like the idea of making this a legacy thing. I like the Warner Brothers animated characters. So I hope this is good. You know, LeBron James this is going to be his foray into producing and fronting a film. And I think that he'll probably put his all into it. So it could be good.
Was it Trainwreck that he was in, where the male lead was a sports chiropractor or something, and he was I think that was it. Yeah, he was really good in that. Again, I have no special connection emotionally to the original, but I know a lot of people are probably going to be really pumped about this. So let me ask you guys, for those of you who are excited about a new Space Jam, what do you think about the name? What do you think about the new logo? And LeBron James putting this out, particularly right now as everybody's in lockdown. Yeah, I got to say this. It's pretty cool when we're in the lockdown that film fans can get little teas like this. For those people who are looking forward to this movie, that was probably pretty cool for him to release that right now. I mean, I know MCU fans would love it right now if, like, Kevin Feige released, here's your first look at Angelina Jolie in full costume and whatever. I mean, that would be pretty cool too. Anyway, what do you guys think about this? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Samuel Pole, who writes, well, Disney's next live-action remake has been announced. A remake of their animated Hercules movie produced by the Russo brothers, no less. A few years ago, we saw 2 Hercules adaptations, one from The Rock, flop at the box office. So do you think that the nostalgia for Disney's admittedly loose take on the legend of Hercules will be enough for this to succeed? More importantly, who is going to play Hades? Oh, that's the big question. Because I don't think you're going to get... why am I freezing on... the actor's name who did the voice of Hades. Why am I freezing on the actor's name who did the voice of Hades? I'm freezing. I'm looking at his face. James Woods. I was going to say, he's got a high school named after him. I'm thinking in my head, he's got the high school named after him in Family Guy. What's that? Yeah, James Woods. James Woods does the voice of that and does it brilliantly. Okay, so just so you know, like, wait, what's this? They're making a live action Hercules? Yeah. So this comes from the Hollywood Reporter. Disney is going to zero to hero once more, putting into development a live action remake of its 1997 animated movie, Hercules. The studio has hired Dave Callahan, the action scribe who launched the Expendables franchise and wrote Marvel's upcoming Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, to pen the script. So there's a couple of interesting pieces of information in here. Number one, of course, is that the Russo brothers are going to be producing this. Secondly, though, we've got the guy who wrote Shang-Chi. He also did the original Expendables. So you know there's probably going to be a lot of action in this. They're probably going to go pretty action on this. Now, the most interesting thing to me here is that this is going to be an adaptation of the story that they used in the animated film. So it is going to be an adaptation. It's not just another random Hercules movie. This is a live action adaptation of that original thing. Couple of thoughts. Number one, I do really like the idea of doing this. You know, it's actually pretty good, and I like the idea of the Russos attached to it. Now, somebody asked me not too long ago, what would I think about them doing a live-action Hercules thing? And honestly, I said, I don't know that they'll do that. I don't know that this is the right movie to do that with. And yet, here they come out of the gate, and they are doing it. And it's like, you know what? You're doing it with the Russos. You're getting this guy ready. Okay, I'm intrigued. This is an interesting idea. That said, I'm a little bit skeptical at the moment. Because so far, the Russo brothers' new production company has put out 2 movies, and I haven't liked either of them. They put out 21 Bridges, and by the way, all their movies have some MCU connection. They put out 21 Bridges with Chadwick Boseman, which I thought was, frankly, a bad film. I thought that was a bad film. Then they put out Extraction with Chris Hemsworth that has mind-blowing, fantastic action in it. But when the bullets weren't flying, I thought it was a pretty damn poor movie. To be honest, that's just me. There are people who really appreciate it, and that's great. And I think the action's fantastic in it. But as a movie, I thought it was pretty poor. So I really would love to see them come out strong with this Hercules thing. The fact that they're going to this writer tells me they are going to go heavy on the action with it, which is an interesting approach to doing something like this. So, you know what? I'm not going to say I'm excited for this, but I am going to say, mark me down as being really intrigued. I think this is an intriguing sounding proposition. And the fact that we're going to see the Russo brothers getting involved with their production company helming up an animated film or a live action adaptation of an animated film, I think is pretty interesting at the very least. Rob, you hear about this. What do you think about the choice of doing a live action remake of their Hercules movie? And what do you think about the involvement of the Russo brothers and the writer that they picked?
I think it's all pretty rad, to be honest. I mean, I love this kind of mythology, and if they're gonna have gods of the underworld and the gods of Mount Olympus, and I mean, it could be cool. I just hope, you know, we've seen things like the Clash of the Titans remake, and it kind of goes into similar territory. I want it to be kick-ass, but I know it's still got to be Disney-esque. So that the tone of it's going to be what I'd be most interested in seeing how they're going to navigate. But I'm all for it. I mean, I when I was a kid, I loved the story of Hercules. I loved that whole milieu, and I think it could be a lot of fun. And if they're going to do it, it could kick ass. I just hope it's better than 28 Bridges?
21 Bridges.
21 Bridges?
28 Bridges is going to be the 7th sequel.
28 Bridges, 28 days and 28 Bridges later. 21 Bridges. I just hope that it's good, you know?
I'm going to give you an over-under number. All right. I'm going to give you an over under. And I'm going to put this to you guys at home as well. Over under 35%. Over under 35% that the Russo brothers cast. Are you ready? Thor. That they cast Chris Hemsworth to play Hercules. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. The reason I'm going to set the number at 35%, which is a pretty high number, is because on every single one of the productions they've worked on so far, they've had connections to the MCU. They've worked with Chris Hemsworth in the MCU, and they just worked with him in Extraction. You're going to need an actor to play Hercules who can legitimately also lead, has the acting chops to legitimately lead a movie. Connection to the MCU, physically can kind of carry it off, and has the acting chops to carry a movie. It seems to me like the logical choice could very well be Chris Hemsworth. So, Rob, I throw that number to you. Over under 35% that at the end of the day, they end up casting Chris Hemsworth to play Hercules.
Well, I think, look, the points you just raised are very salient points. And I think, yes, he can do comedy. You know, I'm sure that there's going to be a lightheartedness to this movie. It's not going to be grim and dark. Hercules is going to be kind of cracking wise, and I think Hemsworth with that, he's not just the physicality of it all. He's got those comedic chops. He's very winning presence on screen, and I think he's wanted to branch out into this. He can do kick ass, but I'm going to go over 35%, John.
Okay.
I'm going to go over 35% because who else would you get? I mean, Chris Hemsworth playing Hercules to me is kind of a slam dunk.
Yeah, it kind of works. Now, I'm going to set another over under for you. All right. You ready for this? So you guys at home, over under 35% that they end up getting Chris Hemsworth. Here's another over under. The odds that they do this like the original animated movie as a cartoon, as a musical. I'm going to give you my line here. 12%. And I'll tell you why I'm setting the number that low. Disney has an adaptation coming out in Mulan that they got rid of the music. They did Beauty and the Beast, which made them ass loads of money. But one of the weaker parts of it was people didn't like the musical translation in the live action movie nearly as much as they liked it in the original animated one. Lion King. A lot of people, despite there was the animation stuff of it as well, but a lot of people weren't really big on the musical stuff, translations from the original one. I have a feeling that Disney's going to start to lean away from using the songs and the music and their stuff as we're seeing in Mulan. So I'm going to set the over-under at 12% that we actually get the songs from the original Hercules in there. Rob, over-under 12% that they use the songs from the animated movie in this one.
I think there's got to be some songs in it, doesn't there?
I don't know. I don't think they're not doing it for Mulan.
Well,
so you can take over.
Well, the thing about Mulan is they're doing it as this historical epic.
That's true.
You know, the whole tone of it is, and I think with Hercules, I think that if they're gonna go of a more comedic, I could see it more Aladdin-esque than Mulan-esque.
That's a great example of a recent one where they did keep the music. You're right.
You know, but on the other hand, I have to say, with the Russo brothers, they could go more serious and more delve into that mythology. But I got to tell you, I just think if this is more humorous and lighthearted, like an Aladdin, you know, evocative of a period, and I think it could be kick-ass. And even if it had songs, I'd dig it, man.
And then that crosses over the question of then, can Chris Hemsworth sing? Can Chris Hemsworth do the song? So that's a good question. All right, guys, listen. We put the question to you. What do you think about this live-action Hercules adaptation from the animated film? You're right. There have been a couple of other Hercules films the last number of years, one of which, of course, was The Rock. Neither of them turned out to be all that great, but this will be an adaptation of the animated one. What do you guys think of that? And then remember, I want you guys to answer those over-unders. Over or under 35% that they get Chris Hemsworth to play this role, and then over or under 12% that they actually use the songs from the movie. I want to know what you guys think. Jump into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, guys, we've got one more main topic to talk about here today before we get to the live questions. And our final main topic here today gets submitted to us by Terry Blythe, who writes, "Hey, John and Rob. With America slowly looking to open up again, the thing I'm looking forward to the most is going to the movies." So you and me both, brother. "Obviously, it's going to be a challenge to open up and make people feel comfortable coming back. So I was wondering what you thought are some of the things the theaters need to do when it's clear to open again. Thanks." All right, man. Thanks a lot for sending that in. And you're right. From Georgia to Texas and a few other places, and even in California, there's while we're still in lockdown in California, they're starting to talk about, at least, putting in place the plan or process to open things back up again. And so now we're in a position where there are movie theaters. By the way, again, in some states they can open again, but the larger movie theater chains are still not wanting to open yet, and that's fine. That's another issue for another time. But what do these movie theaters have to do in order to open up in such a way that will make the audience feel comfortable and want to come back to the movie theaters when they do unlock the doors and open them up again? And Rob, I'm going to want to get your input on this. I'm sure some of your reasons, Rob, are going to be probably the same as mine. But let me throw out 5 things that I think the theaters need to do in order to get people wanting to come back and feel comfortable in coming back. All right. And the first thing we should probably mention is there are going to be some people that no matter what the theaters do, aren't going to feel comfortable going back to the movie theaters quite yet. We just need to acknowledge that right up front, right? That there's just going to be some people that no matter what are not going to quite feel comfortable going back to the movie theaters quite yet. They're going to want to stay and just wait and see how everything unfolds. And that's totally fair and totally reasonable. But what are the things that I think they're going to need to do in order to get people back? Well, one thing is something we've talked about a lot here. Open up the theaters with big, popular, blockbuster library films. Come out of the gate. Rob, we talked about this the other day. Come out of the gate, bring back Infinity and Endgame, where it's a 2-for-1 deal. Come and see it on the big screen again. The final 2 chapters of the Infinity Saga, Infinity War, Endgame, one price, $7, whatever. Put up these archive films and do them at a special reduced price. Because remember, in the first couple of weeks that these theaters are open again without any new movies, I should say, their primary goal has got to be to enticing people to get back into their routine of going to the movie theaters again. Multi-film ideas, big popular films at reduced special prices just to get people into the habit again. I think it's absolutely one of the main things they have to do. So that's one thing that they have to do. The second thing I believe they have to do is something that a couple of the chains said they will do, but it needs to be mentioned. They need to change their theater cleaning protocols and really take them up a couple of notches. And I'm talking about, don't just go through and sweep in the theaters and get the popcorn off the seats. I'm talking about Clorox wipes in there, wiping everything down in between theaters. That means you're going to have to, instead of like 15 minutes between showtimes, make it 35 minutes between showtimes. Do whatever it is you have to do to have your crew be properly trained, get into the theater quick, wipe everything down, spray the seats, wipe them down properly, clean up the floors, make sure it's pristine and clean so that when people walk into a theater, they feel like they're walking into a relatively clean environment. I think that's important. Probably a good idea even without the lockdown, by the way, theaters. It's probably a pretty good idea to do that anyway, but right now, I think that's important. So that's the second thing. The third thing I would suggest that theaters need to do, and some of them already do this, but they've got to pick it up. The notion of, is particularly for the first while, having an usher take your physical ticket and tear the ticket and then pass it back to you, you got to get rid of that. Like, I know at the theater I go to, the AMC Burbank 16, and all the AMC theaters around me, when you go, they just scan my phone because I use A-List. But even if you don't use A-List and you buy your ticket online, you can have a scan code, or even with physical tickets, if you print a physical ticket, you can just scan the ticket. They've got to make sure that if there are theaters that don't have that in place, you need to put that in place. Because again, it'll just make the, I think, patrons going feel a little bit more at ease and a little bit more comfortable. The fourth thing I think they need to do is another no-brainer, but that is, at least for the first while, you've got to have lower capacity in your seats and stagger the viewership out. You've got to stagger it out. And I don't just mean having a few seats in between you and the person next to you. You got to have not have somebody sitting directly behind you as well. So you got to kind of checkerboard the seating a little bit. Again, this is really more a thing to make people feel more comfortable. Make it where a married couple who buy their tickets together maybe can sit together, but you've got to space out these things. Keep it at 30% capacity, maybe 25%. Again, that limits how many people they can get in, but it'll increase people feeling comfortable coming back and all that kind of stuff. And Rob, the last one is one that I've not seen any theater do, and it's just a suggestion. And again, this is more to make people at least feel more comfortable going in. At the front door of every theater, before you walk into the movie facility itself, as you come up, you're walking up to the building, you get to the front door, right there, big hand sanitizers. And to say, you are required to apply hand sanitizer before coming into the building. It's not a difficult thing to do. It's a real easy thing to do. It's not something that will create a lineup. It's not something that takes 30 seconds to do. You walk up, pump, walk away, and just say that before entering, you were required to apply hand sanitizer. I just think it's just one extra little step that'll make people inside feel more comfortable. And there are a few other things as well we'll talk about here in a bit, Rob, but those are some of the main things that I think theaters need to do first once they start unlocking their doors and opening them back up to invite people in. Rob, I wanted to ask you, because I know you've got some really interesting perspectives on this, is what do you see as being, let's say you own one of the movie theaters in town, you need to open back up. What are some of the first things you're going to do to get people back into the theaters and to feel comfortable coming into your theaters?
Well, I think you covered it pretty well. My local Vaughn's grocery store, they had people standing outside. They were limiting how many people came in, and the people standing outside would squirt your hands with hand sanitizer. They required it before you even went into the grocery store. And they now have a crew of people that you see, they're wearing blue shirts, kind of this color blue that I'm wearing now, and it says cleaning crew. And they're in the store. They're working in the store like constantly all day long, wiping things down. You go, and this is after you've had hand sanitizer. And they've got people doing that. I think the thing about movie theaters is that, say what you want, you can be as clean as you want and do as many things as you want, but it's people that transmute, that are vectors for the disease. So we're carrying it around with us. We're the worst spreaders of it, and we're the ones that leave it on surfaces. So while you said like you have less capacity, you leave room for people to sit. You hand sanitizers, people meeting you at the door. I think all of that is a good thing. And while it might be a pain in the ass for a while, I think it's a necessity. And the most important thing is that I think that aside from, of course, obviously being medically safe, you need to change people's minds about going out in public. They've had soft openings. We've seen them around the country now. I was watching a story on the news about restaurant businesses in Texas. People aren't going yet. They just don't feel comfortable. I told you I was interviewed by this Texas station about movie theaters, and they had a segment where they were asking people on the street, how do you feel about going to movie theaters? And they're all like, hell no. I made the comment, I said, well, if I was wearing a hazmat suit, you couldn't keep me away from Tenet. I'm going. I was joking, of course, but kind of. But I think that's really important, is you have to reassure the public that measures are being taken. One guy tries to blow up a plane with his shoe bomb, and we're still almost 20 years later taking off our shoes at the airport security. And I think that's what they've got to do. They've got to step it up. They've got to make sure that the people are made aware that they're making an effort. And hand sanitizers and wiping the concession stands down, those are good starts. And to see that kind of thing is going to be really important to get people to feel comfortable about going to the movies again.
I had another idea, but it may not be practical, but it might be. I think you've got to eliminate the concession stand line I think that you got to eliminate the concession stand line. So I think you need to do you can do one of two things. One, not as effective, but maybe more practical. Have it where you order your food, like you go up to the concession stand, you order your food, and they do what they do in some McDonald's. They give you a number plate. You say, okay, go on into your theater and have this number plate out, or give us your seat. Show us your seat number, because now it's all pre-assigned seating. Show us your seat number and theater number. Book. Okay, now go. So now a person is literally standing at the concession stand for 20 seconds and they're gone, instead of like the 4 or 5 minutes that it usually takes, stuff like that. That way, people aren't standing crowded in a line nearly as long. They're just going through a lot faster. They're going to have to hire a couple more kids to be runners to take the food into people and their things, but it means not having to stand there. Because Rob, I have stood in these concession lines sometimes for up to like 35 minutes. And that's no bueno under the current, I mean, it's no good under normal circumstances, but it's really no good under these types of circumstances. So you do what a lot of grocery stores are doing. You set out blocks of space in the lines, say, stay within this block until you can move to the next block, right? Instead of standing shoulder to shoulder, people in line, and get people through that line as fast as possible and have the food maybe brought to your seat. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of different things that can be done here. Question is for you guys. There's probably a million good ideas that are practical to do. So I want to hear some of your ideas. What do you think are some good, practical, applicable things that movie theaters can do in this transition time of when they open their doors to make people feel more comfortable coming to the theaters and to be enticed to come to the theaters? You're a theater GM right now. What are your ideas that you're spitting out there? I want to hear them. Jump into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. And by the way, I get written to all the time by movie theater executives and movie theater general managers and managers. There are theater managers and owners watching this show, so they're probably going to read your ideas. So go ahead, put some thought into it. Let me know what you guys think about that. Okay, guys. With all that down and out of the way, we're going to move into our live questions today. Unfortunately, because last night was a little bit busy for me, we do not have Earth 2 John to sit here and read the questions. So Rob and I are going to take a quick, short break, quick 4-minute break or shorter, to rest the vocal cords, stretch the legs, go down and refill my drink, all that kind of stuff. Give you a chance to run and use the bathroom. So if you guys will hang tight with us, don't go anywhere. Robert and I will be right back with your live questions. See you in just a couple minutes. And we are back. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and indulgence as we took a little bit of a break there. Now, let's get on over and start taking your questions. We're going to start off with Diamond Dog's puppy, who I got to get his question up here. Here we go. Wanted to, hey, John, like you, I don't do favorite films lists because I really can't narrow it down to top 5 or top 10. All I know is my favorite film of all time is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I've seen that film probably 100 times. The film has everything you could want: revolutionary action, characters you care about, classic story, great sleek cinematography, and an ending that always makes me well up. But after T2, I can't complete a top list. Everything after is so fluid. What are your thoughts? Listen, man, Terminator 2 is like simply one of the best theatrical experiences. It's visceral, it's action, it's a great follow-up. Rob, your quick thoughts on Terminator 2.
Dude, come on. Who doesn't love Terminator 2? I mean, yeah, you know, I remember when that movie was the first $100 million movie, and I remember they made it very quickly. It was made very fast. And when it came out, it just kicked unholy ass. It was awesome. You know, what's not to love about Terminator 2?
Yeah, the only, of course, bad thing about it has been that, you know, every single Terminator film since then, as I flicker around here, every single Terminator film since then has really paled in comparison, unfortunately. All right, we move on here. Dirk Walker writes, I think Trolls must be having a really strong holds or some clear path to profitability that we don't see yet for Universal to lean so heavily into VOD. No, I think what you're seeing is Universal trying they look at something that's a really expensive part of their pipeline, which is the theatrical cut. And they're just trying to figure out ways to cut that out. There's a reason you have not seen any of the other studios come to Universal's side in this. And that's because it's just not feasible. And the other studios know it. And that's why you're not seeing Warner Brothers or Paramount or Disney or Lionsgate or Sony or any of the other studios coming out and saying, yeah, we support Universal. No, they don't. And that's why. I think they're just really, Jeff Shell is really digging in his heels here and trying to, but then again, you know, you need some people sometimes shaking things up to make us examine the current situation to see if there's different ways of looking at it. So again, these are just parties that need to talk to each other and stop talking through headlines. Little Ray writes, number 1 of 2, you ever watch movies in 3D at the theater? I personally don't care for them and would rather watch a movie standard, but I remember people saying how good Avatar was in 3D, which I think helped the movie's numbers at the box office. A little bit, not as much as people think, though. What are your thoughts on 3D? Well, most people who watch this show know my thoughts on 3D. I think it's a stupid, useless gimmick. And I see no inherent value in it, personally. Like when I walk in to watch a movie that directors and cinematographers made painstaking efforts and work into making these beautiful images, color-rich images and blah, blah, blah. And the first thing I need to do when I show up in a movie theater is put tinted film over my eyes for a gimmick? No thanks. Doesn't add anything to me. I'm glad 3D televisions died. I would rather them go away personally, but some people appreciate them. Rob, I know you are somebody who has an appreciation for a good 3D movie, are you not?
I am, but you know, again, it comes back down to authorship and intent. I think Avatar is the greatest example of a 3D film in the history of the medium and the history of cinema, you know, especially if you saw it in 3D IMAX. It was brand new, groundbreaking technology. It was unbelievably well done, and I would say the 3D that was done for Avatar was head and shoulders above any other kind of 3D. Unfortunately, they saw the Avatar numbers, and everybody wanted to jump on the 3D bandwagon, and we ended up getting a lot of terrible substandard 3D. And I think that was the problem, is that maybe Avatar is the only movie that really lived up to the 3D moniker. And that's a bummer.
All right, next up, Larry Lease writes, very interesting to hear everyone's views on AMC and Universal. Yeah, I mean, because you are hearing a lot of different viewpoints on this, like a lot of really interesting viewpoints. Again, this is something they really should be talking about amongst themselves and not in the headlines. It's just not a good look for either of them right now. Not a good look for either of them. All right, Brandon K writes, is there an expiration date on Universal owning the distribution rights to Marvel's Hulk and Namor characters? And or do you think Marvel Studios will ever retain the full production and distribution rights back on both? I want stronger, the angrier Hulk. As far as I understand, I mean, the Namor thing, I don't think anybody on the planet fully understands the rights mess with Namor. The Hulk thing, from my understanding, is very cut and dry. Universal has the distribution rights of any Hulk film that gets made, period. There is no ticking clock. They're not a production company. There's nothing like that. So as far as I know, they have the distribution of the Hulk to the Hulk. Marvel can make a Hulk movie whenever they want. It's just that if they do, they have to let Universal distribute it, much like Sony distributes the Spider-Man movies now. But that's not something Marvel is interested in. And so they can get them back, but they're going to have to deal with Universal. They're going to have to offer Universal something that makes it appealing to them to give those distribution rights back. So as far as I understand it, that's our situation there. John S. writes, I have a feeling if straight to streaming becomes a thing, a lot of people will wind up not watching the movies. Well, I can't watch it whenever I want. I'll watch later. I better go see it before it leaves theaters or I'll have to wait 3 months. Yeah, I mean, and then one of the other problems, of course, is the main problem, Rob, that I see with that the studios are going to face is that people are going to do exactly what they're talking about right now. They're going to rent a movie for $20 and they're going to invite 5 people over. And now the studios are making a fifth of what they were going to make before. Plus, we talked about this recently, Rob, that we've seen piracy spike since this has all happened. I mean, I think there's other factors involved in that too. But what do you see as maybe some of the pitfalls here?
Well, I mean, it all comes down to earning and money and how do you get a return on investment and all of that. And the studios, especially on these larger tentpole properties, we've talked about it so often, the money that is spent needs to be returned. The studios are not sitting on this mountain of cash they used to make movies. It's all borrowed money. And I can only imagine the one thing that I've not seen addressed at all is the interest payments the studio's incurring by pushing a movie a year into the future. I mean, their whole business model is based on the fact that they'll be able to get a return in some way, shape, or form in a reasonable amount of time. And if they don't have the theaters to do that, and they're expecting the pay-per-view can't handle, they just don't make enough money yet. We don't have that paradigm. People aren't used to it. Maybe in 5 or 10 years it'll work, but not on a movie like, I don't know, the new James Bond movie for $250 million. It doesn't work. You have to have the studios. So,
all right. Yep, good point. All right, next up, Cabbage Bank. I like the name, writes, streaming piracy will kill all hopes of a profit for any release to VOD. It is siphoning profit from all services already. You called it on The Mandalorian. It's wrong, but sadly, at this time, it is a fact. Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is it is a lot easier to get high quality pirated versions of movies when everything is streaming. That's always been the case, though. I mean, that's always been the case. And it is something that they are going to have to, I mean, look, it's already something, lockdown or not, it's something they have to be looking at, like seriously, because it's just too easy to get a high quality rip of something now in other ways. All right, whatever 444 writes, apparently there is an uproar regarding the new Dune film. Some YouTubers are predicting the film will fail at the box office due to the changes on a few characters. I personally think that's just dumb. No, it's not dumb. It's idiotic. It's completely idiotic. Look, the movie's going to be good or the movie's going to be bad, right? It's going to be good or it's going to be bad. And I'm going to tell you right now, if Dune ends up being great, it ain't going to be because they changed the gender of one of the characters. And if Dune ends up being bad, it's not going to be because they changed the gender of one of the characters. Battlestar Galactica is one of the most beloved television series in history, and they changed the gender of one of the key prime characters. But that's not what made the show good. And if it was terrible, it's not what would have made the show terrible. Any suggestion that the changing of the gender is either going to make this movie better or worse is simply idiotic, in my opinion. I don't know, Rob, how do you see that whole thing? Because I know you're really looking forward to Dune.
Well, I can't wait. And they have altered the gender of a character, Leah Kynes, Dr. Kynes, and who is the leader of the Fremen. And instead of being Chani's father, she's now Chani's mother. Now, I think if you know the Dune saga, especially if you know Frank Herbert's 6 books, women play a huge part in the Dune saga, especially as it moves. I mean, not just the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, but what happens with the whole armies in the universe. So I think people that are complaining about gender swapping, like you just said in Battlestar Galactica, I think in this case, it's a change that works. And Denis Villeneuve said, there's a lot of guys in this movie. I needed as a storyteller, I needed to swap a gender, and I don't think it's being done for. I think it's being done for story reasons, and I think they're fine. I don't have a problem with it. And I think before everybody should quit their bitching until they see something. If it comes out and it turns out that was a bad move after we've seen the movie, I'm like, all right, then complain. But beforehand, it's like, you know what, John? Heath Ledger should never play the Joker. He'll never pull that off, dude. He's going to ruin the movie. I mean, come on. Have we learned nothing?
I agree. All right, next up, Dark Helmet writes, "Hey, John, I've seen a few sites reporting that National Treasure 3 will more than likely get released on Disney+. Have you heard any credible news on the future of this franchise? Thanks." As of right now, it's not even officially greenlit. You got to keep that in mind. They're trying to develop it. They've put it in the pipeline and they're trying to develop it, but it's not even received an official green light, let alone getting to a spot about where it would or would not show up. Now, listen, I would have no doubt that it's possible it could go straight to Disney+, but right now that's a total coin flip. So, look, let's clear the hurdle first about whether or not the movie even gets made, which is not a for sure thing at this point. I mean, they're making progress. It would be kind of cool if they did. But let's clear that hurdle first, and then let's worry about whether it goes to Disney Plus or theatrically. So, yeah. I mean, hey, Disney Plus might be a good home for it. You never know. That might be a good home for it, but right now it's not even officially greenlit. Arun Baburaj writes, "Hi, I saw Bad Education, Blow the Man Down, Extraordinary, and Swallow during my lockdown time. All are awesome indies. Have you seen any of these?" I watched Bad Education. I reviewed Bad Education the other day. It's the new Hugh Jackman film on HBO. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. I have not seen any of those other ones. Rob, Man Down. That sounds familiar, though. Maybe I have seen it. Extraordinary and Swallow are not films that I've seen at this point. Have you seen any of these, Rob?
No. Oh, wait. Did she say Swallow?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, my God, dude. You have to watch that movie.
Okay, I've not even heard of it.
It's basically about a woman who starts eating inappropriate things because of the way she feels. It's how she's dealing with her life.
I have heard of this.
It's really uncomfortable.
Okay, I've not watched it, but I've heard of this.
I loved it. It's beautifully directed. The acting is incredible. And wow. Yeah. It's good.
Okay, let's see. Next one up here. Arun also writes, follow-up question. Why do you think these indie movies are being popular, even not popular, across the world? Is it due to the marketing? They have incredible stories. But listen, it doesn't matter how good a story is if people don't know about it. That's the problem. That is why marketing, a lot of people sometimes ask me, John, why do you care so much about marketing and focus a lot of attention on marketing? Because if people don't know about a movie, they can't see it and they won't watch it and they won't care about it. So yeah, that is one of the internal struggles of the smaller indie films, is smaller indie films will not have the 60, 80, $120 million marketing budgets that they need so badly to really get out there. And that's really it. Arun also writes, sorry, meant to type indies not popular. No problem. I totally understood what you meant there, Arun. No problem. Kenneth Dowling writes, hey, John, hope all is well. You talked about Magneto in the MCU being black. It could work. The real challenge is Professor X. Can a black Charles Xavier work? He comes from wealth and privilege not many African Americans have, particularly in the era and where Charles came out of. This is what I would say. Like we've been talking before about, look, when you do Magneto now, you've got to make a change. He can't be the World War II Holocaust survivor anymore. Too much time has passed. He can't be that anymore because we can't have a 90-year-old Magneto. So you have to find a different travesty in world history that's a little bit more recent, like the Rwandan genocide or something like that. Or something about the civil rights movement maybe, where a young child has seen the absolute worst in humanity. And I think there's a good argument to be made that a lot of those things could give us a black Eric, because of whether it's a Rwandan genocide or something like that. But here's the thing, even if you make Magneto black, and that's a big if, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to make Charles black. I think making Charles black becomes a little bit more tricky. Rob, tell me what you think of this, because unlike Eric, where you have to change what his origin is for a modern storytelling, Charles, you don't. Charles coming from his back, that transmutes from one era to another era, so he can maintain his background. And I think there's really not much of a need to change Charles from white to black. You can if you want, but I don't see the need being there nearly as much, nor is it as easy of a change. Rob, what do you think about that?
Well, I look. Magneto couldn't be black, but he can also be a man of the world. He could be part of any kind of, whether he was, say, maybe he's Muslim and maybe he fought against the Russians during their invasion of Afghanistan or something, and he saw horrible torture or whatever. And making Charles Xavier black, well, what if black Charles Xavier was a self-made man? You know, he came from very humble beginnings. He wasn't born into privilege, and he created that privilege. He worked his way up through became educated, became a captain of industry, and all of his money is his own because he made it. And that's his whole thing, is that he was able to pull himself up by the bootstraps from his humble beginnings, and he had to deal with the fact that he's black and suffered from the slings and arrows of racism his whole life. So he knew both things. He knew racism firsthand, and he also knew what it was like to become a self-made man. And that could be a really interesting Charles Xavier. I mean, I don't mind switching the ethnicities of characters as long as the characters are well written and well established and they're believable.
All right, good point. All right, next up. Ben Rayner writes, "Hey, John, did you hear that Ron Jeremy got cast in Kiss Kiss Gang Bang?" Yeah. So for those of you who missed it the other day, I was trying to quote Anchorman, and I meant to say Ron Burgundy, and I accidentally said
I was
Ron
there.
Jeremy. Oh, dude, I've been hearing about it on all my stuff since then. People will not let that go, and I accidentally said Ron Jeremy. And of course, Kiss Kiss Gang Bang is one that still follows me around. All right, Mr. DJ Lynn writes, "Man of Steel might not be your top 10 movie of all time, but the way you talk about it so passionately makes it feel that way. I had the same situation with La La Land, and I love that movie so much and so passionately, even though it's not in my top 10 of all time." Yeah, listen, La La Land's a great movie. It is so creative and inventive, and what Damien Chazelle did with that film was really unique. Like, I hadn't really seen a movie like that in a very long time, and how he was able to come out and do that was great. But there's something really special about Man of Steel. While not in my all-time top 10 favorite movies of all time, it is my top 10 favorite comic book movies of all time. But to me, there's something unrelentingly special about that film, TJ. And so I can relate with you, man. I can relate. By the way, one of our favorite places that Ann and I like to go to eat, it's like really, literally a 10-minute drive up the street from where we live. It's a place called The Smokehouse. And it is the restaurant they use. It's actually owned by George Clooney. And it's the actual restaurant that they shot those iconic scenes in La La Land. They shot in that restaurant. It's one of our favorite places to go. So just a little side note there, TJ. So if you're ever visiting LA, make sure you go to Smokehouse in Burbank, because if you love La La Land, you're going to want to go there. All right, Chosen One writes.
Cheese bread.
Oh, the cheese bread in that place is so good. It's so freaking good, the cheese bread in that place. Like, it's like to die for. Absolutely to die for. All right, next up, The Chosen One writes, "Wouldn't Universal be the one losing a lot of money if they decided to go PVOD? Wouldn't they lose out money on individual tickets when people can watch it at home with friends for the price of $20? Oh, that's the main problem. That's the main problem. Is that, like I said, when I watch a UFC fight, that's great. I order the UFC fight, but I have like a dozen people come over. And so we all watch it there. If they were to say, like, put out, I don't know, Fast 9. If they were to put out Fast 9 on VOD for like $20, $25, great. But I'm going to have like 10 people come over. And instead of getting like $15 a movie ticket for 10 people, like $150 box office thing, you're going to get $20. You're going to get $20. Not to mention, Rob, somebody else brought up a really good point the other day that I had not considered, which was, you know, when Endgame opened up, how many times did you see it opening weekend? Endgame. I think I saw it 3 times opening weekend. That's not counting the premiere or the press junket. I think I went to go see it 3 times opening weekend. What about you? I know you saw it multiple times.
I saw it twice opening weekend.
Twice opening weekend. So somebody else brought this up to me that I hadn't even really considered. That not when you do these rentals online, you generally get 48 hours. You can watch it for 48 hours. Now, some places, some of the streaming services, you can watch it as many times as you want for 48 hours. Some places just have it where you have to watch it within 48 hours. You got 48 hours to watch it, but you can only watch it once. But that adds another little layer to it because some of these places you can watch it multiple times in the first thing. So that's another interesting little addition on that. So this is a good observation, Chosen One. It's one I've been making myself for a long time. I think that's one of the big problems that they're going to be facing. Black Bono Lala writes, I don't know what Universal was thinking, but man, I want to see Fast 9 in AMC theaters in IMAX. I mean, look, you're talking to a guy, though, who that is how I want to see my movies, is in a movie theater. That's the best viewing experience. That's the way filmmakers make their movies, intending the audiences to watch it. It will always be the best way to watch movies. Absolutely. So not everybody feels that way. Not everybody feels the same about that, but that is how I feel about it, and clearly how you feel about it too, Black Lala, and absolutely, 100%. That's why you're never going to see Universal even suggest that they're going to try to put Fast 9 on VOD at the same time that it's in theaters, because they know no movie theaters will carry it. No movie theaters in NATO will carry it if that's the case, because that's the same rule for everybody in NATO. Aaron Jones writes, my question for John is, where did you learn about good filmmaking and what makes film great? Critically, what makes one bad? Well, listen, dude, that's a 5-hour-long conversation. There's no answering that in 30 seconds. There's just no answering that. What makes a film good? That's why it's subjective. There is no mathematical formula. That's the thing. If you have a man with black hair and a mustache say the words EBGB Gooby Gobby, that equals good movie. There's no formula. There's not a mathematical equation that does it. It's like what makes a painting good. It's the expression of the artists putting it together, and then it all comes down to of what experience did that piece of art create for you. And there's no formula to it, Rob. I mean, I don't know, if you had to say one thing quick, Rob, what's something that makes a movie good? I mean, you can say good story, but then it's, well, what makes a story good?
Yeah. I think it's something that uses the art and craft of cinema, which is whether it's cinematography, whether it's sound, all of those technological advances, with the addition of the literary component of having a well-written, well-crafted story, then the actors. It is a frothy mix. It's almost like alchemy. It's almost like Rumpelstiltskin spinning straw into gold. You need a bunch of disparate elements that come together, and from a bunch of talented people that all work in the service of a singular vision of a story to make it work.
All right, next up, Edna McNabola writes, Trolls World Tour should be remembered as an epic sequel to a great movie, not the spark of a mass debate leading to a theatrical meltdown. Yeah, it's kind of funny that out of all the movies that are really at the heart of such a huge dispute right now, that movie would be Trolls World Tour. By the way, I like the first Trolls movie. I thought the first Trolls movie was actually pretty cute. I'm just throwing that out there. Edna. All right. Sahil writes, just to clarify my Universal trying to be VOD pioneers question, why does Universal seem hell-bent on VOD given how little money it makes? Is it desperation during hard times, a part of some larger plan? I think it's a mix of both. Listen, Rob, this is something I mentioned the other day. You can't blame anybody, Universal or otherwise, for trying to figure out under these, Rob, you and I have said many times before, there's no playbook for what we're in right now.
No.
There's no playbook. Everybody right now is just trying to figure out, how do we survive in this environment right now? And everybody's trying to do that. And that is absolutely, so desperation, part of just figuring out how do we survive right now, is absolutely a part of what I think is going through Jeff Shell's mindset. The other one, though, I think is very, very much the idea of, well, hey, look at our pipeline. This is a very expensive part of our pipeline, the theatrical. How can we cut that part out? And I think I think it's a mixture of different things. I think part of it's business, part of it is the desperation, but it's the same. It's not just them. It's not like, oh, Universal's feeling desperate. Everybody's feeling desperate right now. Everybody's trying to figure out, how the hell do we survive this? You know, yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of comes out of that. All right, Alpha O writes, the issue with should have been intended for theatrical release is that many such movies, including Oscar baits, are being pushed past 2020, reducing the qualifiers pool, while original streaming films like Bad Education are top-notch with terrific performances. So, Rob, let me throw this to you, because I talked about this yesterday. You know, the Academy put out their new rules saying, hey, you know what? For this year and this year only, streaming movies can be eligible for the Oscars, but one of their provisos was it had to have been intended for theatrical release.
Yeah.
When it didn't. But I don't know, what's your quick thoughts on that whole new thing, these concessions that the Academy is making for this year?
Well, I'm not real happy about what I've read, what they're trying to do, especially like combining the sound editing and sound mixing categories, which are different things. I don't like this idea that they're tailoring the Academy Awards for a television broadcast, because what are you giving awards for excellence in your craft, or are you making a TV show? And I think at the end of the day, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to, like everyone else, they're trying to make heads or tails of this whole situation. But, the Academy Awards, Bad Education was made for HBO. That is an Emmy-nominated movie. That's for Emmy Award consideration. It's not for theatrical. And I agree, if something is considered, if it was made for theatrical and they pulled it, then maybe you could make a consideration for that. I'm down with that. But changing these rules to fit the situation, I'm never really comfortable with that kind of thing. It seems knee-jerk, and this too shall pass. I mean, it'll be a blip in history at one point, and I think you've got to stand up for what's right for what is it you're trying to do. If you're trying to celebrate the art of film, don't just change your rules because the life changes under you. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing to do it. I don't dig it.
All right.
Don't like it, John.
Don't like it. Don't like it. All right. Joe Sanchez writes, Upgrade, one of my favorite films of the decade. I think Blumhouse has amazing world in their hands, fresh new stories that can be told in the Upgrade universe without involving the previous. This idea gets me hyped. What do you think of the idea? I will tell you what. And Joe Sanchez, by the way, tipped $55 for that. Thank you so much, Joe, for supporting the channel on that level, man. That's really cool. And because you did tip over $50, I'm going to make your own standalone video answering this in a few weeks from now. Keep your eyes open for that. I'll be honest with you. I really like Upgrade, not just because it's amazing, greatly choreographed action, and it's got it's tough today to pull off a really nice tight ending, right? The little twist ending of it, I thought was wonderful. It's just a good little movie. I don't think you make a cinematic universe out of that, though. I think that is just a terrific one-shot film that I think would get drawn out and tired if you tried to make a franchise or a cinematic universe out of it. So personally, I really enjoy the movie a lot, but I think it's a good one-shot movie that should then be left alone because I thought it was so good. Rob, I know you liked Upgrade a lot too. What do you think about the idea of taking and either making a franchise or a cinematic universe out of it?
I liked it too. As a matter of fact, I have the Second Sight UK box set special edition Blu-ray of Upgrade, and I like it as a standalone movie. Maybe you could make a sequel to it, but I don't know if there's much of a story after that. I thought it was a well-crafted tale with a great beginning, a middle, and an end, and I think Lee Whannell was smart to go forward and make The Invisible Man after he made Upgrade. I don't think you need to come back to Upgrade. I don't necessarily think making a second one is going to do anything more than the first one did. Unless, look, I'm all for it. If they have a great story that is set in the Upgrade universe, I'm all for it. Bring it on. But just to make another movie, just to do it, I'm never down with that.
All right, let's move on here. Next up, that was Joe Sanchez. Bernie writes, God, I love this show. Thank you so much, Bernie. Thank you for always being so knowledgeable and informative, especially clarifying the whole Universal situation. Most people are saying AMC are just being greedy children. No, this is part of the problem is that people aren't dumb, but people are misinformed. That's usually when there's a problem like this, it doesn't come, people aren't stupid. It's just a lot of times there's wrong information out there. There's the concept that, AMC's creating this new rule because they didn't like what Universal did. No, that's not what happened. Movie theaters all movie theaters have a rule that they will not play in their theaters movies that play day and date on VOD because that's bad for their business and it would be suicide for them to allow that. So they don't allow that. They never have. That rule has been in place for years. And so when Universal came out and said that they were going to do that, all the movie theaters are saying is, we're going to enforce the rules that we have always had and we've always had. And if you do that, we're not playing your movies on our screens. Just like always. That has always been the rule. And if we were to allow that, it would be financial suicide, and they can't do it. And I just find a lot of people are just misinformed. They don't actually have the information. They're under these wrong notions of what's going on. And then when they hear the actual real information, then they go, oh, okay. And that's usually the biggest problem, is misinformation. So that's what I usually see it is. MC McClunky writes, Matrix beating Star Wars Episode 1 for best visual effects. Thoughts? I've always said this, as much as Matrix is a vastly superior film to Star Wars The Phantom Menace, a vastly superior film, there is no way in hell it should have won best visual effects. Most people I know in the visual effects industry are like, what the hell was that? Star Wars The Phantom Menace was revolutionary from start to finish in every single way, mind-blowingly revolutionary in their visual effects. And there's no way that should have happened. MC McClunky also writes, your best worst dudes ex machina in a movie witnessed. Your best worst dudes ex machina in a movie witness. I have no idea where you're at. Where you're asking, MC. Sorry about that. Jeremy King writes, Jarvis from Agent Carter TV show wasn't in game. Yes, we talked about that actually a few weeks ago, that was the one minor little wink of the eye that they crossed over. But again, it had no bearing or importance or effect on the MCU as a whole. But we did mention that one a few weeks ago. Kate Bretner. Ooh, someone for Kate Breton writes, hey, John, on the topic of superheroes going from TV to movies, I don't think it happened previously, but with all the streaming that Disney is getting their hands on, it will likely happen in the near future. Tom Ellis and Ezra Miller showed up in the Crisis event, and people loved that. Mr. Feige is a master, so I don't think it would be very hard for him to take a great show like Daredevil and use that material. The shock would get people in the show. I just don't think so. Rob, we were talking about this the other day about how, Kevin Feige, he had nothing to do with the Netflix stuff. He never acknowledged the Netflix stuff. He never put any of the reference to any of the Netflix stuff in his movies. Of course, we've had Charlie Cox come out yesterday and say he killed those rumors. He goes, we're never going to get a season 4 of Daredevil. I'm not going to be in the MCU. That's not what's happening. It's blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. What do you see as the possibilities of maybe Kevin Feige at some point wanting to incorporate the Netflix stuff in there? Do you think that's a realistic possibility at this point?
I mean, look, I do like the actors who played. I love Mike Coulter. I love Jessica Jones. I always forget her name. She was in Breaking Bad and a million other things. And I like Mr. Cox. I think he was a good Daredevil. But I just think that, again, Kevin Feige has crafted the MCU to be its own thing. And hell, we have enough time with SPUMC, and how much of that is in the MCU. I don't know if they're going to actually put those characters. I think they'll start from scratch, to be honest.
Yeah, they probably will start from scratch. All right, next up. Sorry, that was MC McClellan's right. More ridiculous, Hulk dogs or Predator dogs? I actually thought the Predator dogs were actually kind of fun. They used them in a ridiculous way, but right at their DNA core, the Hulk dogs were atrocious. The Hulk poodle was just atrocious. Lord Vanderkill writes, Aaron's face during this soda talk. Yeah, because I mentioned that when I used to do the movie blog on Cut podcast, I would literally drink 4 liters of Coke per day. I would go through 2-liter bottles of Coke a day back in those days. Not a healthy habit, my friends. Not a healthy habit, Lord Vanderkill. Yeah, Aaron's face was classic. All right, Joseph Book Reviews writes, why is CGI so expensive? Do the artists keep that? CGI, listen, just quickly, CGI is so expensive because it literally takes hundreds of people making full-time salaries who are all artists on massive, massive equipment, companies that you have to hire. That's because imagine you're paying $100,000 a year to an artist who's got to work a year and a half on a project. Times that by 50 artists, 100 artists. Watch a visual effects heavy movie, and when they get to the part of the credits showing the credits of the visual effects companies and all the people working on it, Rob, it is hundreds upon hundreds of names. Then you got to pay the company fees, and then you're paying for the gear and the software and the render farms and it's a huge, huge expense. I mean, what would you point to being the main reason CGI costs so much?
Well, I mean, that's it. It's CGI. It takes a long time. It has a large pipeline. You have to have, I mean, people think it's so easy now, but to render, if you're rendering at 4K, I mean, a lot of effects we've seen are rendered at 2K, but now they're rendered at 4K. It takes a long time. And with a lot of these sequences, you're looking at hours sometimes of CG. I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's not necessarily explosions or creatures. Sometimes you're just rendering environments that people are, live action environments that people are moving through. I mean, it's an enormous expense. People, computer power, overhead, it's equipment costs, software licensing fees. I mean, amazing, John. It adds up. It's enormously expensive.
Okay, let's see. Ethan Holgate writes, "Hey John, with all the heat on Amber Heard, do you think she'll get replaced in Aquaman 2? I think Emilia Clarke would be a cool replacement." I don't think so. I honestly don't think, and I'm not going to go into Wire how, because I'm not going to get into the whole TMZ-ness of it, which I try to avoid on the show. But no, I don't think you're going to end up seeing her get replaced in Aquaman 2. Jose Sanchez writes, "Hope you get the chance to answer my $55 question tip. First time tipping. Thanks, you're all amazing. Fans since 2015. Love much, love and filth." Well, we did already, as a matter of fact, and we will get around to doing it in its own standalone video as well, Joe, on its in its own time. All right. Russell Amador writes, "Doesn't matter if you win by an inch or by a mile, winning a winning." Quote by Ron Jeremy. So I told you, the Ron Jeremy things are never going to stop coming. All right, Greg Scott Bailey writes, "On the topic of a TV show Marvel characters appearing in the movies, the only example I can think of James Darcy, who played Jarvis from Agent Carter, who then appeared in Avengers Endgame." Yeah, we mentioned that one, and somebody else brought that up as well. And that's a good example. Again, it had no impact on the story or anything, but it was a really nice wink, because when he popped up, you could tell who in the audience had seen Agent Carter and those who had not. And it wasn't a lot of people who had seen Agents of Carter. I really liked Agent Carter, as a matter of fact, but you could tell who was there. It was a really nice little wink and nod. James L.H. writes, "John, like you, Rush is my favorite non-MCU Hemsworth film. Of the original Avengers, here's my favorite films. They are Robert Downey Jr.'s Chaplin, which he got an Academy Award nomination for, by the way. Chris Evans' more recent Knives Out, he's great in that. Ruffalo, Spotlight. Scarlett, Lost in Translation. And Renner, Hurt Locker. Although close with Wind River." Yeah, I actually have to give the nod on that, Rob, to Wind River. On that one, because I loved Hurt Locker. I believe it won Best Picture at the Academy Awards, did it not?
Yep.
I think it did. And Renner was great in it. It put him on the map for a lot of people, but I actually preferred Wind River a little bit, which I was surprised it didn't. Rob, when you think of great movies with these MCU stars outside of the MCU, what are maybe some that pop into your mind?
Well, I really like a film called Under My Skin, or Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson. I think it's great. And Jeremy Renner, I did like Hurt Locker a lot. I mean, I really did. I think I might have liked it more than Wind River. But here's one, Master and Commander with Paul Bettany. I mean, Russell Crowe stars in it, but Paul Bettany's like his best friend in the film. I love Master and Commander. And Paul Bettany is terrific in that movie. He doesn't star in it, but he's one of the co-stars, and it's really, really good. So that's just what pops into my mind right away.
All right, next up, Greg Scott Bailey writes, "My not guilty pleasure while drawing or relaxing list movies. Number 1, Hackers. I don't mind Hackers, as a matter of fact. Number 2, Zoolander. I've seen that movie 1,000 times. Number 3, Hot Fuzz, one of Edgar Wright's fine films. Number 4, Dodgeball. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. TV shows. Number 1, Star Trek The Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise. Number 2, Stargate, SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe. 3, Walking Dead, and Supernatural." I gotta actually say, Rob, I was never much into the Stargate shows outside of the main Stargate. Like, I watched Atlantis, and that's where Jason Momoa got his kind of bigger break, I suppose. But I never really liked a lot of Stargate outside of SG-1. I thought SG-1 was great and imaginative and really ahead of its time, but I didn't really like a lot of the other stuff. What are some of the ones that stand out to you? Were you much of a follower of Stargate?
Dude, it comes up on my own show all the time. I have never watched any of the Stargate shows, and people are like, "What?" You know, and I'm constantly being berated because there's Stargate Universe, Stargate Atlantis, Stargate SG-1 ran for like 10 years, and everything I've heard about it, I would dig it. But if I started it, I'd want to watch the whole thing, and it's like, do I have that much time in my life? But I should jump into it. But I mean, other than that, it is a good list. But that Stargate dude has become the bane of my existence. The bane of my existence. Every single day, people say something to me about it.
All right. The Nerd Errant writes, if Disney were an RPG after the Dalmatians defeat Cruella, it's time for the most important part, the loot. When they get home, Anita now has a new fur collection from what they didn't sell. Well, to quote Ron Jeremy, thanks and bring on the filming. I told you. There's going to be a lot of quotes of Ron Jeremy quotes for a long time. I am single-handedly revitalizing the name recognition of Ron Jeremy. That's all me. Let's see. Nerd Aaron also writes, John Campea on Earth 33, Michael Bay's Lobo is one of the funniest films in years. Yes, we doubted, but thank God he didn't go for the crude humor. Instead, playing Bayhem for laughs was a stroke of genius. That's kind of cool of what Lobo is anyway. And Rob, it's actually kind of funny. It brings up an interesting point, though. People have been wanting a Lobo movie for a long time. Now, they tried using the Lobo character in that Krypton show. That actually season 1 was really, really good. I never did watch season 2 because I saw the previews for it and I thought it looked silly. And I wouldn't say I loved, but I really liked Krypton season 1. But anyway, do you think there's ever a way we're gonna somehow at some point get a Lobo movie? I know they've tried. I know they've talked about it. Do you think that could happen? That could actually work?
Look, I liked Lobo all the way back to when he was introduced in like Omega Men back in the early 80s, mid 80s. But unless you get like somebody like Dwayne The Rock Johnson and you're going to paint him actually white, or maybe I guess CGI it, I don't know how they could do an effective Lobo. I too did not watch the second season of Krypton. I liked the first season though, like you, and I want to catch up with it at some point. I just haven't, so I don't know. But I mean, Lobo's a character maybe best left to the comics, but who knows? All right. Last question of the day, guys. Unfortunately, I have a meeting this afternoon, so we have to cut today's show a little bit short. But don't worry. All the questions I got asked on today's show, we're going to have a big, long companion video coming a little bit later this afternoon where we're going to get to all the questions you guys sent in. So that will lead us into the weekend, of course. So just keep your eyes open for that. But the last question today comes to us from the Nerd Errant, who writes, I just found out that Steven Spielberg was a possible director for Superman the movie. So, John, if Spielberg directed Star Wars is a 10, if Spielberg directing a Star Wars is a 10 on your movie wish list, where would you put Spielberg directing a Superman movie? I don't know. See, I love the Superman movies, but they're not my favorite franchise of all time. Part of the reason why I am so obsessed with the idea of Steven Spielberg directing a Star Wars movie is 3 key factors. Number 1, Star Wars is my favorite franchise of all time. Number 2, I believe Steven Spielberg is the greatest filmmaker of all time. But number 3, and this is key, because Spielberg has such a direct connection to Star Wars through his decades-long relationship with George Lucas, and he's even come in and consulted on a couple of Star Wars films, including the prequels, in which he even kind of framed up the big final battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin on Mustafar. You can see that in the special features and stuff like that. So it's the combination of all those 3 things put together, his connection to it, that I think he's the greatest director of all time, and on top of that, Star Wars is my favorite thing. It's that combination of 3 things that makes Steven Spielberg making a Star Wars movie the top thing on my list that I would love to see. I don't have that same connection with Superman, nor does Steven Spielberg have that same kind of connection with Superman. But would I like to see a Spielberg directed Superman movie? Sure. But he's the greatest filmmaker of all time, so I'd love to see him make any kind of movie. Rob, if I had to put it to you and ask you for your combination of your dream X director directing X franchise for X reason, if I'd ask you to put that sort of combination together of something you would love to see, what would you end up with? I would like to see Spielberg direct a Bond film or a Star Trek movie. Because I think Spielberg he's our greatest, in terms of cinema, no one puts the camera in the right place more than Spielberg, but what he does with character. And I think seeing a Spielberg Star Trek movie, he would nail those characters and he would keep the film, all of the film pyrotechnics, the sweeping camera moves, and would be done with purpose. And it would not be done just for pyrotechnics' sake. It would accentuate the characters. It would accentuate the story. And I would love to see David Fincher take a crack at a Star Wars movie, to be honest.
All right.
He worked on Jedi.
All right, guys, listen, that will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Again, we have to cut today's show a little bit short just because I have meetings that I have to attend to. So thank you guys. And again, don't forget, I will be putting up a companion video a little bit later, getting us all caught up on all the questions that have been sent in. And there are a bunch still to come, and all your questions are getting answered. Make sure you check out that companion video a little bit later. Then, of course, Open Mic will be tomorrow, and Robert and I will be back for the John Campea Show on Monday. In the meantime, guys, may your weekend be filled with relaxation, with enjoyment, triumphant victory, all getting you ready for another week to come next week. So thanks, guys, for being here. And Rob, thank you for being here, dude, as always. In the meantime, where can people follow you and your adventures online?
You can find me at Burnett RM on Twitter, find me at Robert Meyer Burnett on Instagram, or find me on my own show, Robservations, on my YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, later today.
And you guys can, of course, follow me on all the different social medias, simply at John Campea. Guys, thank you for being here and making us a part of your day. We're always so cognizant of the fact of what an honor that is that you decide to spend part of your day with us here. And a special thank you to all of you guys who sent in the questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel while you were doing it. Myself, Rob, Aaron, Jonathan, Ray, everybody who's involved here with the John Campea YouTube channel, thank you very much for that. All right, guys, that'll do it for us for today. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.